All right, you ready? So here's like the intro part. To bra or not to bra? Exploring a journey of life's unpredictable twists and turns, how to claim your personal power from within and lead a fun, fulfilled, soul-driven life, one epic, hilarious, insightful coffee chat at a time. Let's get real. Let's get raw. This is your host, Em, on Bra or Not to Bra. Okay, guys. So that's my little practice intro. And now we're sitting down with Allison Orlovsky. I'm so freaking excited you're here.
Hello. I'm
Yay!
excited to be here.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's just start by sharing like who are you in like one sentence. We'll go deeper into it, obviously.
Right. I am a relationship and intimacy coach, and I work with couples in long-term relationships to help them level up their passion, play, and partnership so that they create a relationship that never grows old, even when they do.
Yes, I love that. Intimacy when you get old is so, I mean, I know I'm not, well, it depends who you're talking to. Someone thought I was 23 the other day. I was like, thanks.
Take that. Absolutely take that.
This is like, great. Take my card. Perfect. Yes. So important. Okay. And obviously we're going to dive into all of the intimacy and juicy stuff in a little bit. But first, what we're going to start off with is a rapid fire of 2 random ass questions that we each picked from a huge pile of questions beforehand for each other. So we don't know what we're about to ask each other, but based on all the questions that I read, it's going to be funny. All right. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, like I get to ask you first? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hit me.
All right. You ready? Okay.
Yes.
What is your best unspecial talent?
Well, all of my talents are special.
What's like the kooky, funny, like?
Wow, I haven't thought of this in so long, but at camp one year, I learned, I don't even know what it's called. It's like a calling for birds or something. All right, you ready? You ready?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we had a demonstration. That's awesome. That is so fun.
But like, what can I use that for today? Nothing.
It's just so fun. It's that random thing. That's what makes it like, the people that like used to think like, their armpit thing was funny or
do not compare that to that. Okay, your turn. All right. The question I picked is, what's the most important thing that you ever forgot?
My kid.
What?
So I've got 3 kids, and I'll say that it was my oldest. It was my first time.
She's not a parenting coach, you guys. No.
Nope. Left him at a practice. Forgot all about it.
That's incredible.
Before cell phones, can't remember my phone number. Coach is trying to figure out how to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
So,
that
never happened again, but that was, like, it did not win Mom of the Year. Like, that had to be one of like the biggest, just most mortifying parenting.
Clearly everything turned out great.
He was fine. At least he was safe. Like, I mean, that was the good thing. But forgetting something important, your kid's kind of one of those things.
They live, they learn, they grow, and now they're here.
And he survived, yeah.
Okay, so I'm so excited because I know you guys. Allison is just so freaking cool. We connected as friends before I even knew what she did. And then I found out what she did. And I was like, oh, holy shit, she's amazing. So do you want to just tell us a little bit more about what you do? Like who's the type of person who's like, hey, Allison, I would like to come see you?
Sure. So I really focus on coaching which I'm going to first distinguish the difference between coaching and therapy, because a lot of people have questions and don't actually understand the distinguish between the two.
This is good. This is good for me too. Can I use your wording right now?
Totally. Well, and that's just it. I mean, your clients probably already understand working with you as a coach, what the difference is. But especially I think when it comes to marriage counseling, marriage therapy, and I work with married couples. My primary thing is couples in long-term relationships, because I feel it's, from a coaching perspective, a very unsupported area. There's lots of dating coaches and, people that support kind of getting you into that space. But so for me, therapy heals the past, and consulting, and that isn't necessarily so relevant in a personal space, but consulting fixes the present and coaching creates the future.
Ooh.
So
I've never put the consulting piece in there.
Well, and consultants can be, on a personal level, they can be your doctors, your lawyers, your mechanics, they're fixing something specific. It's a one thing. I'm going to pay you. You're going to fix it for me, and I never have to think about it again.
Like getting like a molar filled,
or whatever, how bad it is.
I have no idea. I haven't had any more.
Right. Well, and I think on a professional level, though, consultants, when you hire a consultant on a professional level, you're really looking for their specific expertise and for them to give you the answer to move forward. And so therapy really, and there is an overlap. It's not like,
for sure.
Therapy, you're focusing on the past and healing those wounds. And, typically is, more traumatic, heavier stuff. Coaching is not, I think a lot of people have a misconception about coaching and that I don't want to sit there and it's going to be like this heavy stuff and I don't want to go back or that there's something wrong with me if I need coaching.
Yes.
And coaching really is your support structure to help move you forward in your life and help you get what you want. There's things that get in our way of getting what we want. And so we're here to help shine a light on them, help move them out of the way, help change some limiting beliefs, partner with you to get creative on what works for you.
Yes.
Somebody that's not in it. Like, I love this analogy that you are inside the jar and coaches are outside the jar. You can't read the label when you're inside the jar.
Can it be a mason jar that I decorate with sparkles?
Totally.
Okay. I'm in it.
Love it.
Okay.
So, just that, to hold that mirror up for what you can't see for yourself because you're in it. And so that's what I love about coaching, is that it really gets to help move people forward, and then they get to create the lives that they love to live in whatever way. And so I just want to, from that place, from a coaching place. So in a relationship, I'm not going to you have to look backwards just to get some context, a little bit of understanding of some of the things that have happened to get you there, but we don't live there. So we really look at
time making sense of everything that has happened to get you to this point. That's not the full part of it. It's a brief part of that. And then let's do the work.
Right.
Cool.
I think especially with relationships and couples, why that distinguishing the difference is so important is because, especially in therapy, and there's absolutely a time and place for therapy for couples, but there's a lot of couples that's actually not what they need. And what they think they have to go back and fix everything that's ever gone wrong, because ultimately they want the feelings that they had when they were first together, right? All the fun and the romance and the sexy and the partnership. And then over time they become disconnected, things fall apart. They're more like roommates than soulmates. And so they were here, now they're here, and they think, well, here are all the things along the way that went wrong. So we have to fix all these things to get back to these feelings.
Ooh, let's erase everything that happened typically, is that like what your mind goes to when you're like, oh, I can't get it out of my mind that they said this 3 years ago, like that kind of stuff?
Yes. Yes.
And then you're like, if we erase all of that, then it's as good as the first 6 months that we met.
Well, it's not like we hold on to it so tightly as a self-defense mechanism.
Mm.
But ultimately, like, we are now different people in different places. So this is where, from a coaching perspective, you've got to take responsibility. There might be things that your partner had legitimately is to blame for. We, both of us, you know, in a relationship, have things that we need to
Like not picking up your kid.
might be one of them.
Sorry, I had to. You gave me that.
Yeah. So from that place, though, we spend so much energy. Either we don't want to fix everything because it feels so overwhelming and so exhausting. So we'd rather just stay where we are. And a lot of couples are in this, like, it's fine. Like, we're not fighting and yelling every day, but we're not connected and partnering and having fun and dreaming and having sex and, you know, those great things. They are
We're
just
not getting along.
right. Right. And I mean, I can speak from experience. My second marriage was very much like that. We co-parented, great. We actually were pretty good teammates, but we had no intimacy, emotional, physical, like it just wasn't there. And we were really disconnected. We didn't dream about what we wanted to do for the future. We didn't travel together. We just took care of a home, went to job, you know, our work, paid the bills, and took care of our kids. And that was the extent of it. And that was really unfulfilling.
So that's kind of where my question comes in of like, how do you know? Well, first of all, do you see couples together or
Right.
how's your practice work?
Right. I actually don't. So I will coach both partners, but individually. And the reason for that is I don't want it to feel like therapy. And I went through therapy. And even though my ex-husband and I were really amicable, when we got in that room, a couple of the dynamics showed up. One, when stuff showed up that he or I didn't know about each other, but we were willing to tell a therapist,
Ooh.
that was really challenging. That was really triggering for both of us. And we were like, well, why couldn't you tell me that before? So
That's
actually
a really good point.
So that created more tension. And then the other thing was that when you are trying to own up to what you did in the relationship, there is some shame in that. If, you know, you could have done things better, and we all can do things better. But even despite that, there is a human tendency. Like, I really wanted the therapist to always say, Allison, you're right, and he's wrong.
Yep.
Even if I was wrong, I didn't want to hear. I didn't want to hear that I was wrong. And I certainly didn't want to hear I was wrong in front of my ex-husband, because then as we walk out of there, then there's the, well, he said you were wrong. And I, you know, and the therapist never did that. But there's that sense of wanting and desiring that, so that I'm off the hook, or that this isn't my fault, or I didn't create this. And so that was my experience. I think that's a lot of people's experience. And so the beautiful thing with coaching, and I will just coach one partner, we have way more power in our relationship on our own than we think we do. But if both people are interested, I absolutely will coach them individually. But the power of that is that we can look at things like in a really safe container, and that you can acknowledge without your partner, you know, hearing, oh, I could have done that better. And then it's helping empower them to take that and then create the improved relationship, create the communication, start the conversation, have the date. Then they each get to be the hero.
Yes.
Right? Not because the therapist told me to.
Yes. So is it a requirement for your clients to openly tell their partner that they are coaching with you? Or do you have some clients that don't share that?
I recommend that they do, because that helps facilitate, you know, the open and honest and, you know, relationship. But if they feel that there could be some backlash, that that their relationship's their relationship, and that's not on me. And if they're willing to get support and help to move their life forward and their relationship forward, then I will support them in that. So
Yeah,
it's
with
not a
whatever.
requirement. And some people are like, at first they're nervous to talk about it with their partner. But as they start to see, like, the partner's going to notice that there's a shift, that
Yes.
things are changing. And ultimately, when that conversation happens, then there's the opportunity to say, yeah, this has been great, hasn't it? Great. I'm working with a coach.
Yes. Yes. And at the end of the day, like, if I'm imagining like Susie out there being a little timid to tell her partner, Alex, that I don't know anyone with those two names, that like she's going to see a relationship coach. It's truly all, even like what I do too, falls under the umbrella of life coaching. And so even opening up the conversation with that and being like, oh, and we've actually gotten really deep into talking about my dynamics of my relationships. And then like sharing that, right? It doesn't have to be like this huge, like, guess what? I'm seeing a relationship coach. Yes or no, do or die.
Right. Absolutely. That's
I totally put words into your mouth. So let me know if that's your perspective too.
No, I think that's so true, because our lives are not in silos, right? Like, our lives are a big bowl of spaghetti. And most often, while we as coaches have a focus, we never only talk about, like, your relationship, how good or not good it is also a reflection of your own self-worth, where you are in your career. Like, are you happy? Are you not happy? We often take a lot out on our partners. What are we willing to do to create our own life and find our own joy and fulfillment, rather than relying on our partners to do that for us? So there's a lot of, things that come up during coaching that aren't specifically related to, just relationships, because it's your relationship with yourself.
Right. It's like how you're doing with you, and then like what you're searching for in someone else. And if there's been a pattern, like, of the type of person you're seeing. I was just listening to a podcast today on this. I don't remember who it was, but she's awesome and she's British, so she's fun to listen to. And she was basically saying that we look for things in partners that we don't feel like we are sufficient in. So like, if you're not making a lot of money yourself, but you want to be, maybe you're always dating rich assholes. Maybe you're dating rich, not assholes, but you don't mesh. And it's so hard to become aware of it.
Well, tell me a little bit about like your dating life, and how do you see that showing up for you? Is there specific ways that you notice?
Yes. So actually, as I was listening to that podcast on my way back today for this, I started thinking about this date that I have lined up for tomorrow night. And this was someone that I was seeing pre-pandemic, and then we kind of no. And then I moved back to the city and was like, hey, guess who's back? And I realized as I was walking, I was like, that was totally a convenience thing. Like, I don't actually want to be with him. I don't see this long-term. He is like into farm animals and I'm really not. And like hunts. And I'm like, I am a pescatarian. And okay, that opens a whole can of worms. But the point is that there's so many qualities about him that I do like. And it's so hard to like weigh it out. Like, at what point do you start thinking, okay, are you being really high maintenance, or are you being realistic of like, okay, I don't see myself going to their farm every weekend or every other weekend surrounded by a bunch of goats. Like, where do you draw that? And like, because I'm sure your client's imagination, well, maybe not as much as mine, but it like keeps tumbling on itself, you know?
Well, I think it's getting clear on and this does not sound very romantic, but it's actually going through the exercise of what are your requirements? What are your non-negotiables? Like, what are the things that you have to have? He or she, now we're switching this a little bit more to, on some level, to dating. But if you're a city girl and you know country life is not for you, that's a non-negotiable. Like, we do not have to settle.
Mm-hmm.
So settling and feeling like I'm not going to get someone better, so this is as good as I'm going to get, is
Okay.
a different place of coming from than saying, looking and being like, okay, no one's perfect, but he checks 90% of my boxes. And maybe I'd love if he made $10,000 more, or maybe I'd love if, I laughed a little more often to the point of peeing my pants. But, right, like there's those things that sometimes we create our standards so high, and that also protects us from letting us get hurt, because we're like, nope, out the door, nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Or sometimes, and that's kind of exactly how I feel. I feel like my standards are either super high, and then I get into this mindset of like, okay, you're not going to end up being with someone if you keep those standards so high. And I struggle with that in between.
Right. And I think, again, this is not romantic. I get that. But
No,
it really
it's fun for me.
creates some clarity. Is you have your absolute non-negotiables. These are the things I have to have, or these are the things I will not tolerate. So there's kind of a,
Like 20 goats.
pros and cons of, the non-negotiables, both sides of it. And then these are the like kind of high level, like have to have, like, here's my bottom salary here. And I know, again, doesn't sound romantic, doesn't sound very hard, but all these things eventually will, if you don't meet them very closely, will then create resentment and frustration, right? So like your bottom tier might be like, okay, for a salary, he has to make at least 50,000. I'd be really happy if he made 75.
Yes.
Right. And you really then kind of, you go through and you rate that person on how much does he make you laugh? And is that a big priority for you? Some people that may not be, a sense of humor may not be an important thing, but kindness and volunteering might be much higher on our priority list.
I like can't hear you talk about humor and laughter and not smile. I was trying so hard to keep a straight face. But that's so true. That lets me know that that's like crazy high on my priority list.
Right. So if he's not making you laugh every date, every conversation on some level, and you're just bored, then like that's who they are. And to be absolutely authentic and to own that's who you are. That's something really important to you that brings joy for you. If that's not there, that, and so then there's the bottom tier of these would be really nice to have. $100,000 would be really nice to have. He, loved to cook. That would be nice to have. Maybe for you as a pescatarian, if he was also
gluten-free and pescatarian. Damn, if you're listening right now and you know anybody who falls under those categories, makes over X amount of money that I'll disclose later, and a bunch of other details that I'll disclose later personally to you, hit me up, girl.
So, right, that again doesn't sound very romantic, but it actually gets you out of your head of, well, he's got these 5 things that are really awesome, but then there's these other 5 things that just don't do it for me. And when you fill your relationship and your dating life up with people that aren't a good fit, whether you believe in, universe, divine energy, whatever that thing is for you, when you're filling it up with things that don't fill your cup, it's just taking up space and not allowing room for that person to actually come in that is the right fit. Whether it's actually on your calendar and then energetically in your heart.
Ooh, I love that. I talk a lot about, have you heard of the book, You're a Badass by Jen Sincero?
That's what kicked off this whole personal development for me.
Me too.
I actually met her at a book signing.
What? No.
Yes. It was actually when she was promoting You're a Badass at Making Money. So I have 3 books signed by her.
I have there's a new book, like Habits. I went to a book signing virtually. It was over COVID. So I have a signed copy from her, but that's the extent of it. But
all your tabs.
What? Oh, guys, it's literally my Bible.
It is.
Okay, so she talks a lot about the universe, or she phrases it as vibrational frequency. Mm-hmm. And so it's totally what you said of like filling up your cup and then making room, and that vibrational frequency that she talks about, like there can be room in your cup, but if it's not the energy that you want to be attracting, if you're not exuding the energy that you want to be attracting, then you're just going to keep filling up that cup.
Yes.
With more bullshit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure that's a phrase. No. But
I'll hysterical. Talk about funny. That totally could be in her book.
I know. That's all right. We're writing a new one, you guys. Okay. Let's get into my favorite topic, sex. What the heck is the difference between you and a sex therapist?
Yes. So a sex therapist definitely is going to get really into the nitty gritty of your biology, like, what's going on if sex isn't working well. They're focusing more, well, there is some mental and emotional aspect to it. They're also, like physically what is not working in your relationship.
Like so performance focused?
Yes.
Got it.
So for me, I focus more on the intimacy part of it. And so really acknowledging that sex is a really important part of a relationship. And it's a huge, connector, and that it's the one thing that differentiates your relationship. You can emotionally be intimate with a lot of people, with your girlfriends, with your family, but physical intimacy is that one special thing. And that emotional intimacy and physical intimacy feed off each other. And so there's a lot of people that aren't having good sex lives, not because they don't know what to do in bed, but because they're not emotionally intimate with each other. They're not sharing their, what's going on in their hearts. And then, when you can be vulnerable there, and for women, here's the interesting thing. For women, it starts with the emotional intimacy. For men, it starts with the physical intimacy. Both need both.
Ooh.
But, and so when we can, there are so many things that often, especially the physical intimacy, that get in our way. Our body image, we don't turn our brains off. I mean, there's science behind how we end up multitasking. Like guys turn, they're an on-off switch. Women, we're on a dimmer switch.
What are you talking about?
We women are on dimmer switches, right? So like we have to turn our brain off and our libido up.
So are you saying that like the more vulnerable men become in bed, that leads to them becoming more vulnerable emotionally, versus women, it's more the other way around?
Well, I think it's which one comes first. So I think when, there's a trust element that happens in intimacy. And so, I think that men want, when they feel physically, or when they are physically intimate with their partner, that then that is the thing that creates emotional intimacy for them. And when women feel emotionally connected to their partner, then we're much more likely to be like, okay, let's get naked together.
Yes.
Right. And so
that's why, that's the difference between good sex and great sex.
Yes.
Totally.
And being able to share that. And so even to say, like, for me specifically in my, particularly my second marriage, we did not have a high level of intimacy. So we certainly had sex. We had 2 kids together.
Mhm.
But for me to say, this is what
No.
feels twice, but for me, I didn't have the intimacy where I could say, this is what feels good. This is what
Yeah.
I need. This is how something I would like to try. Like I felt very intimidated in that space. And I felt like, as I grew as a woman, we were together over 10 years, that if I did bring something up, he would be like, who are you? And what did you do with my wife? She would have never suggested doing something like that. Right. We didn't grow together, and I didn't have the trust that if I brought that up. And we also emotionally, he was not an emotionally supportive person. He was a very good guy, but he could not deal with emotions very well. And so I didn't tell him my hopes and dreams. I didn't, I didn't expect a lot of emotional support from him. He was a doer, not
Yeah.
not the cuddly kind of guy. And so that had a really big impact on and so in the relationship I'm in now, we have conversations about sex. We have an incredible sex life, and we're talking about all the things that in our lives, our dreams, our hopes, our stresses,
Yes.
all of it.
You're
All-
aligned physically, emotionally, and like I was going to say energetically, which is perfect because that's what we're talking about. Like that energetic spark that happens when your frequencies come together, and it just, like, pun intended, explodes. And to get to a place where you feel comfortable talking about your fantasies, talking about what you were saying, like what you like, or something you want to try again, or something that you don't know how to describe it. Like that move didn't have a term, but you liked it, and you feel vulnerable enough to literally like try and demonstrate it. Like just doing whatever comes to your mind without filter or block. And even for me, I'm very, very open. Even for me, like there needs to be some sort of emotional baseline before I'm going to do something like that. Otherwise I'm going to be like, not worth my time. Sorry.
Right. Well, and I think all of that comes down to a certain level of trust. I mean, ultimately, intimacy at its deepest level is incredible trust and vulnerability. And so it starts like a pinwheel. And so the intimacy, the physical and the emotional feed off each other, but it's not necessarily like, well, this one, and this one, and this one. It's like a pinwheel, and they kind of just grow together. You know how you have the starting point, and then there's 2 colors, and they kind of,
Yes.
lollipop kind of thing, where then they just get wider and wider and bigger and bigger. That's how I think of it, that you need to start there, but it really requires being open, both parties, to see that, for, to be able to accept feedback.
Yes.
People,
Yes.
if somebody says, ooh, slower, gentler, faster, that other partner might take that as they're doing something wrong instead of just feedback. And right. So to be able to have that intimacy, to trust each other, to say, hey, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just,
I like this more.
right. And how to then be the partner that is able to gently share kindly without, making that other person feel like they've done it wrong. And especially for couples that have been in a long-term relationship that haven't expressed this in 10 or 20 years. And now
it feels so out of the ordinary.
Right.
And you're just like, I always think about this with relationships that I have and with my clients who are either married or in relationships. And it makes such a big difference on whether or not you start open from the beginning of the relationship. Because when you do that, when you're in a space where you're single and you are starting a relationship, when you establish that baseline, everything becomes so much easier. And I feel like what you're saying is a big part of what you do is you take someone who comes to you and is kind of struggling with that, who maybe hasn't been super vocal or clear from the beginning. And then it's like, okay, how can we develop that without scaring the shit out of your partner?
Right. Because what we often don't see, like, it's so like, we want to talk about sex, right? But ultimately it's all the stuff underneath, because we don't often acknowledge that we change and that our partners change, right? So you're like, if all of a sudden you start talking about, oh, I'd really like to do this, or it feels scary because you think your partner is going to be like, who is this person? Rather than being excited for what's coming up, right? And that's the coaching part of it, of looking forward and creating a new way to be and who you are, and even just acknowledging, like, we change, our partner change, our life circumstances change, of course our relationship is going to change, and that's an amazing thing. That's the thing that's like the spice of life, right? Keeping life interesting.
Yes, I love it. Okay, so if there's one piece of advice that you could give every woman out there about expanding their relationship intimacy.
I think there's a part of me that wants to give like a very specific, like, here's the thing.
Give specific, and then you can give a few answers.
Right. Okay. So the one thing that, like, the biggest piece of advice for growing your intimacy, that is this is what my heart wants to say, is grow your self-worth, grow your self-love. Because when you're in a place of knowing that you are worthy, that you are deserving of pleasure, of having your wants and needs met, so many women, we end up, we're the nurturers. We try and keep everybody else happy. So for us to receive is often more difficult. For us to get past our worries about our bodies and think that this body is worthy of pleasure is often difficult for women. So that self-love and worthiness work. So that's not a bullet, like right then and there.
That's what I do. I tell my clients to build their self-worth, and then they leave.
So that's what my heart, because that's been my own experience as well. And I've seen that happen with my clients, that when ultimately, your healthy priorities is, taking care of yourself first, then your relationship, then your job, then your kids, and then everyone else. And so that just goes back to having a joyful, fulfilling life and being able to receive. So that's like the more from my heart answer.
That just made me so happy. Well, and that's why you went into coaching. That's why you do what you do, because you can't raise someone's self-worth with a plan, with a snap of your fingers. It's not possible. So I could feel that kind of like hesitancy, like saying that piece of advice out loud, because it sounds so like generic, but the truth is that's what it is. And that's why you're here for these women. Do you coach men too?
I do. Yes.
Okay. So for these humans.
Yes. Yep. And I coach any type of relationship. It doesn't have to,
Yes.
So that is
amazing. So all sexualities, head on over.
Yes.
Okay. What was the more broad answer you were going to say?
So I think the other thing to level up the intimacy is this is to think of it sometimes when, for us, getting our libido going is challenging, right? Because we're on that dimmer switch. So for leveling up. So I recommend, if you're not feeling very in the mood and like the idea, so there's a couple, like,
I'm so excited for this right now.
Well, I'm going to preface the answer. So this, again, doesn't sound very romantic, but consider that upping your sex life is like going to the gym. Because at first, when you haven't been to the gym in a really long time, you're like, I just really don't want to go. Because our body hasn't created all those chemicals, those feel-good chemicals, and we've kind of become accustomed to not. And like, we're tired. And, usually this happens.
It's such a good analogy.
Right? But that, once you start going to the gym, even if, let's go baby steps, you're at the gym and you're like, this doesn't, I'm at the gym, this isn't fun, I'm not enjoying this. Usually by the end, you walk out of the gym and you're like, I feel great, that was awesome, why did I wait so long to do that? Sex is very much the same way. That when you haven't, and it's been very sporadic, you haven't done it in a while, you haven't created again, those literally, they're the same hormones.
Like literally like the juices weren't going, they weren't flowing.
Right. So sometimes actually, like, I'm not saying let him force it or her, but sometimes in your own brain, it's telling yourself how good you're going to feel after. And just knowing that you'll get past that and you will start to crave it. Just like once you start working out on a regular basis, you don't feel normal without it. Like you need it.
Yes.
Right?
And eating healthy too. It's literally like anything that gives you pleasure, the more you do it, the more you want it.
Yes.
And the easier your brain is able to be like, okay, in this split second, this moment right now, yeah, doesn't sound super great, but that connection between whatever that action is and behavior is so strong because you're doing it on the reg, doing it, get it? Wow, I effing love you. No other guests. This is just me and you forever. And, just going with it.
Right. Well, and again, when you think of, how things shift in your life after you've worked out on a regular basis, lost weight, eaten out, done something in your life to improve. Like, again, we're not in a silo. Like that, when you are now feeling more relaxed, like there are personal benefits to having orgasms. Like that's not just keeping your body, right? So it's not just the moment, but it's truly,
physical benefits. Like it literally helps your immune system. You probably know more than I do.
Well, but right. So there's, when we start having that. And so sometimes again, because we're on that dimmer switch, it is like hard and get into the mood. And so that's where buy yourself sexy undies and bras, find a juicy book or a juicy, Outlander is a great series that has some definitely steamy.
All right. That's going on to I definitely get turned on by TV shows more than porn. Like,
yeah. And so there's definitely intense romance and lots of, passion. And then, yes, there's, it helps that he is quite, but they really have this incredible chemistry that really does, and well, here's the thing, the amazing thing about Outlander is because it takes place in the 1700s and it's like war ridden. And so while there's it's good for both guys and girls.
Ooh.
Right.
Okay. I have never seen it. So how many people do you think have masturbated to that show?
I don't know. Well, and it's funny because, okay, this is a funny thing. So there's lots and lots of steamy scenes in there, but realistically, right, it's a TV show. So, and their 5 minutes of start to finish.
Right.
Is not realistic. You get the whole sense, you get some definitely there's nudity. So it's more than just under the sheet. You're getting some, definitely some views. But there was, one scene where, the whole thing happened in a minute, a TV minute, right? And I'm like, not like that. He's like, and he just looked, my partner, Awesome, I said, not like that. But then after he was being all romantic and maybe we got her dressing robe and was doing some really, and I'm like that, right? So the point of not just the sex, but that actually the romance part of it.
That is such a good piece of wisdom. That's such a juicy nugget. I never really thought about that. Watching it, you don't have to do it intentionally. You don't have to take homework and watch Outlander with your partner to do this. But if and when you're watching something and there's something in the sex scene that you would really want, or hey, let's try that, or no, that would not be good for me. That's a perfect opportunity to bring it up.
Right. I think that is a great opportunity. Yeah. It just helps foster conversation more easily. And it triggers the creativity because now you've seen something and you're like, oh, would you be willing to try that or not? Again, whether it's porn or, something like this versus just like, okay, we're going to sit down and talk about sex. What's happening, what's not. Like, it just feels, it helps just facilitate the conversation. And another little piece of advice kind of along the same lines is actually grabbing a drink and going to an adult toy store online. Even if you're not comfortable going into a physical one, shopping online and seeing what's out there can trigger, like, how do you get out of your ruts?
I've done it. I've done that. And it's enough. I'll go on and I'll be like, I want to feel sexy. Like, let's get some new lingerie. And I'll look at it. And then like just thinking about wearing it and being in the moment, like that'll get me going.
Mm-hmm.
So go look at all the sales, you guys. Okay. I have one last question.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we've talked a lot about how health in every area of your life impacts each other. Mm-hmm. So something that I've found with my clients is, yes, we're very much focused on health and mental wellness, and it turns into life coaching. Me and you know, and they know, like, it's really one of the same. And when I'm coaching someone, there's that focus on physical health, mental health, that sort of thing. And then one of the coolest things that I've realized over the past years is that almost all of my clients at the end start telling me how their sex lives has drastically improved. And I'm like, I should be nothing sex coach. Like, what am I doing over here? And then I'm like, no, it's really cool that that's an outcome without the intention. So for you, my question is, what are some of the outcomes that come from your coaching that they didn't come to you initially for?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest things are the self-worth and self-love aspect. Because even for men, the men that end up coming to me often are givers and, provide for their families, and just they're not filling their own cup. And, so that therefore they don't feel like they are worthy of doing the things that bring them joy. And so when I'm like, okay, in your relationship, what are your expectations? A big part of, and how are you connecting with your partner, and what are you doing for you? Because here's the thing, when we're in relationships for a long time, we get really apathetic and we stop doing a lot of the things that we did when we were first dating, which means those were the things that turned your partner on, right? Mm-hmm. Like when you had your own hobbies and your partner had their own hobbies, like, you want that, like, and now they just sit at home in front of the TV. That's not sexy.
Yeah.
Right. And we think, well, I need to be here for my family. So now I'm
unless
here.
You're watching Outlander, then it's sexy.
Right. Yes. Right. But truly that they come for the relationship, to how to make their romantic relationship better. But so much of it is tied to their relationship with themselves.
I love that.
And in so many ways. And so I feel like it's a 2-for-1, and
totally, you guys, you got a 2 for, so true though. And that's such a beautiful note to end on, because that's just like the epitome of everything that you do and who I know you are as a personal human being, like raising your worth and stepping into yourself and helping men and women do that for them, and inviting their partner, inviting everyone else around them into that by doing it themselves. So cool. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that you were able to hop on.
I am too. So fun, as always.
So fun.
Such a pleasure.
Okay. I'll talk to you in like a second, but for anyone listening, coming up next, maybe.